Joining us here for a tasting notes is we're going to go a little different than normal, but we're still in the alcohol world. We have Rachel Lawson, alcoholic beverage attorney. Rachel, welcome in.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm glad that you're able to talk because, we talk a lot about beer, bourbon, whiskey, cocktails, things like that, all things alcohol here on Tasting Notes. One thing that I think people might forget, though, from time to time is how complicated of an industry this is. And that's what you're here to hopefully shed a little light on, because the TT or the Treasury's report, kind of looking at all these industry factors, was just released recently. And I figure, why don't we start there and go with what was your biggest takeaway from that report that might have some real impact on the everyday consumer?
Sure. So I'm not sure how much background people have, or you're saying Treasury report and if people even know. So just briefly, in July of 21, Executive Order 14036, if you want to look it up, directed the Treasury to evaluate the alcohol market for any competition issues. And it is titled Promoting Competition in the American Economy. Competition in the markets for beer, wine, and spirits. And this was released about a month ago. And, it's nothing in it should surprise anyone. I think the two things that stood out to me is, again, something that most people shouldn't be surprised at, is that, guess what? There are two major companies that dominate the market for beer in this country. 10 guesses who those are. And, with that comes a lot of issues. They are, clearly engaging in monopolization behaviors. If, you all remember U.S. history from high school, what those types of things are. And they do engage in those kinds of things. And so that's one concern that the Treasury Department identified. And the second is wholesalers, the evil wholesalers. So, I always call the wholesalers, they are a necessary evil, much like myself. So, the wholesalers, as most people hopefully presumably know, in order to make or just traffic and sell alcohol, you have to have a permit, a high level, 10,000 foot view. That's what I tell my clients. That's what I tell my students when I teach about this. And so the people that take it from manufacturer to retailer, play an important role. But what has gone on is they have just been given more power. And post-prohibition, the idea was to take power away from the manufacturers, who at the time had more power. But now the tables have clearly turned. It's been, quite a long time since prohibition was repealed. And quite frankly, it's time for a change. And what the Treasury Department said, the franchising laws that a lot of states, have when it comes to distribution really, really hurt the little guy. Little guy from any alcohol, from beer to wine to spirits, it's very hard for them to get a leg up. And basically the recommendation has been that states need to start pushing towards more direct to consumer shipping laws. So I believe that direct to consumer is going to be the next big revolution in alcohol in the next few years. And I think we're in this report may be the beginning of it, to be honest with you. I think it may happen faster than we think. And the reason is we have a bit of a small company, you might have heard of them, called Amazon, that sort of has everything ready to go. They have the warehouses. They have the people to take it from A to B. They just need the law. They just need to literally go state by state and pass the laws they need. And they are doing that. I happen to know the gentleman here in Tennessee. He is a fantastic individual. He used to be the executive director of the Tennessee Alcoholic Beverage Commission. And that is what he's here to do. And he's going to try to do that one state at a time, because it's never going to be a federal thing. It's not going to, I'm sorry to tell you, cannabis, yes. Alcohol, sorry, we're not going to see any massive sweeping federal regulation. It's got to be state by state. But once it does happen, Amazon is going to allow craft distiller in Podunk, wherever, brewery, to be able to reach anyone in like 2 days. And that is a miraculous and wonderful thing. Absolutely astounding thing to happen. And I think those are the two biggest takeaways that I have, is that we need to do something about these big brewers. And what they think is that the direct to consumer is going to help with that problem. Because if I can get beer from these breweries up in Portland and Washington, I'm here in Tennessee. There is no way that I'm getting them unless they start manufacturing closer to where I am or I go there myself. I think that's what's going to open up the alcohol economy a little bit more, is to put these smaller craft manufacturers on I'm not going to say an equal playing field with a Budweiser, because let's just be honest with that. That's not going to happen. But get them a little bit closer. Because the other thing is, we all know that Miller Coors and Budweiser have been acquiring. They see a craft beer manufacturer that's starting to cut into their margins. What do they do? The easiest thing. It happens in every business. They buy them. And, people get upset about it. And on one hand, I understand that this industry is one that is characterized differently than others, but what they're doing is very common in almost any other industry in the world. But that might need to stop if, the federal government says, you're getting too big for your britches. But this is another way that I think that could happen. I think that allowing the smaller guys to have a little bit of a more level playing field will help with that a lot.
Well, and it sounds like some interesting things are going to happen, because I know across a lot of states they're allowing a little bit more self-distribution than they would in the past, based on how big of a size you are. But it'll be interesting to see. And if you want to, if you're good with it, you want to stick around and chat a little bit more about this report, because it wasn't just a couple pages, and there's a whole lot more to dissect. Are you good to stick around and chat a little bit?
Absolutely.
Awesome. If you want to hear the full interview, just check out all of our social media and go to hopspirits.com as well. Now, with that thought and so forth, you mentioned those two big takeaways. Do you ever see it playing out as simple as that, where it's, they're going to be able to go direct to consumer? Because so many state laws, and that is why you exist. Your jobs exist, is to deal with that web of the very tangled web that comes about it. But do you ever see that kind of direct to consumer? Because there are some places that can, because they have reciprocity and things like that. But do you ever kind of see that going full wide with almost every state being willing?
Yeah. So I think this gives the states kind of the permission to do it. I think at the end of the day, nothing in alcohol is simple or not complicated or not dumb, really. Let's just be honest. I love what I do because it is never the same. No client ever presents with the same situation. You'd think that it would be the same, but it's just simply not every time. And obviously the industry is innovating and new things are happening, and we're dealing with multiple levels of government, federal, state, local, even smaller, whatever those levels are called. And they have very, round holes. And if you are a star-shaped peg, they don't know what to do with you. And unfortunately, the law just doesn't change as fast as the industry innovates. So there will be no clear path to this. There will be no linear path to this. There will be no quick path to this. We have to let the legislature do its job. But at the end of the day, what I tell people as consumers, everybody says, call your senator, and I'm like, you can do all of that stuff. But really, where are you going to talk is with your wallet. That's where you're going to speak the widest and the loudest volumes that you could ever speak. I don't think it's a secret. I am a huge champion of the craft industry. Most of my clients are in the craft industry. I do have several that are, larger and that are distributed nationwide, but they compete with shelf space like everybody else does. They compete with the big guys and the little guys wherever they go. But I think, consumers, the pandemic is I think accelerated and is still accelerating the movement toward direct to consumer. We saw changes in alcohol laws happen in 3 weeks that we haven't seen change in 3 years, now that was kind of an extenuating circumstance, but it's certainly, a lot of most jurisdictions allowed to go alcohol. And that's just one very big step in the direction towards direct to consumer, because the fear of direct to consumer, the fear that the lawmakers and pretty much anyone else who's opposed to it are, minors. and minors being able to have more readily accessible means to alcohol, because presumably if you're getting alcohol booze shipped to your house, if your 16-year-old kid is there fighting for it. Yet in the states that allow this, we're just not seeing that kind of pervasive, violations going on. And let's be real, technology can really come in and fill a void of being able to say, like, common carrier, aka FedEx, UPS, right now USPS will probably never be able to do it. And frankly, let's all be honest, we probably don't want them to. Amazon, whoever is dropping alcohol to you, there already is technology to be able to verify the age of whoever is standing in front of you. And if they are not of age, then you don't hand it to them. It's really that simple. We have facial recognition software. This is not like Jetson type, stuff that it's not going to happen, and it's not out of the realm of possibility. So I think that's the biggest barrier. But I think that as states start to feel like, okay, let's see what everybody else is doing. Okay, these guys seem to be making it work. Okay, we're going to try to do it. But with the federal government starting to push them towards that direction, I think we're going to see more of it happen. I really do. I think that is what's going. That is just the wave of the future. How quickly it happens, it's all based on how quickly the legislative process works itself out. I know we've got bills and actually, and I can share this with you later. I have a lovely visual aid. This is I got to give credit to my law clerk. So we are tracking direct to consumer laws in all different types of spirits throughout the country. So the different colored lines that you briefly saw represent a different kind of spirit, and the dotted lines represent the ones that are currently in legislature waiting to be passed. And it's not, we want to see this map fully full of all the different colors. We want to see that happen so that there's just, because truly the other thing that is just really grinds my gears is that wine, who has a fantastic lobby and has saw the writing on the wall way before beer and way before spirits did. And they just started, really putting this infrastructure in place. So that's why you see there's favorable laws for wine and not as much with beer and spirits. And what I think, there shouldn't be any difference. I'm pretty sure that someone can get just as intoxicated off of a certain amount of beer versus, Jack Daniels. But there's this stigma over whiskey and vodka and spirits versus beer. It's, it's been there since we came to this country. Beer was never considered to be as bad as any other spirit was. But in this day and age, it's like, why do we have a difference? There isn't, no one can really understand that. No one can really explain that. So I think that
I was going to say, and it even goes down to the shipping laws, because wine, for the most part, you can kind of almost have that direct to consumer bit way more than you do with some of the others. And it's kind of very, like you said, very interesting that one gets preferential treatment almost over the other two, even though they all do the exact same thing in the end.
Well, and it's really, quite frankly, it comes down to one of them, the lobby had themselves together. They were organized. They saw the future and they went for it. And that's the difference, and I think beer is starting to get on that train. Spirits, I think, has always wanted to be on that train, but I think that they actually have a harder road to sow there, because there's a stigma of it's whiskey, it's high proof, it's can kill you. But I'm pretty sure all of them can kill you, when under a certain amount of quantity.
Moderation.
You're right. So to me, it's like I think what's happening now is you're seeing this questioning of why are we, I understand. Well, never mind. I'm not going to say that I understand why there are different types of permits for different types of alcohol, because I think we're even questioning that at this point. It's very confusing. That's the other thing is the other thing that the Treasury recommended is to try so that you don't need me to navigate through this quagmire of permitting and formula approval and label approval and the dreaded word of taxes. Like, you really do need an attorney. I mean, I'm most of my clients, they try to do it on their own, and they very quickly are like, I don't know what I'm doing. I need to hire somebody with the expertise. And I don't want to work myself out of a job, because trust me, all new terrain will create new legal problems. But at the same time, even sometimes I look at stuff and get confused, even though I live this stuff every single day. So it needs to be more simplified. I think there are ways to do that. That's a big order, though. It's asking the government to change the way it does things.
Well, and basically you're also asking 50 other governments and then even municipalities beyond that, which that's where I think everything gets very interesting. Because I talking to folks, it can be a 2-year process to be licensed and up and running. I think the best example right now is folks are going, why can't I get a hard Mountain Dew in every state just instantly? Well, they ran into some issues and they only got cleared through about 3 of them right away through this whole lovely process. And they're who they're working with, Boston Beer and others that are well versed in it, but even they run into issues too, the bigger guys. And I can only imagine what a small one would run into.
Oh yeah. And I have permission to disclose this. I have a client that I will shout out. It's called Hard AF Seltzer. You will be able to purchase only direct to consumer tomorrow. Now, obviously you have to be residing in a state that allows that. They are a 8% sugar-based seltzer. It is absolutely fantastic. I have personally tried it. It's being made in Tennessee, shipped out of the state of Florida. And so they, when they came to me and they told me they just wanted to do direct to consumer, I fought them. I fought them probably until about 3 weeks ago. I'll be honest. I hated this. I hated everything about it because, it's just very expensive and it's not reliable. And those are the problems with direct to consumer, is that FedEx and UPS, you can order some alcohol, but who knows when it's getting to you? And beer specifically, it is very temperamental and can just go bad just by not putting it in the right, temperature holdings and shaking it around too much and all that kind of stuff. It's not as hearty as wine, doesn't withstand as much. So I hated this. I hated everything about it. Since the Treasury report, and since they've explained to me how much massive increase in margin they're making just doing direct to consumer, it is absurd. So they told me that the way the cans are printed now, it's basically they're wrapped cans and they're gorgeous. They're matte, but it's expensive. They would only make $2 to $3 per case by going the traditional distribution route. Direct to consumer, they're making $15 a case. The margin, it's absurd. So they launched yesterday to a VIP contingent only. And within less than an hour, they sold 338 cases. And that was just within the first hour. And I can't wait to see what happens Thursday. I'm a little bit scared because I'm afraid we're going to run out. Everything they've made it could very well be sold by the end of this week. So if you want any of it, I suggest you go get it tomorrow when the website opens. It is a very flavor forward seltzer. So if you've tried the seltzers and you're like, don't love it, that was me. They changed my mind about it completely. Now it's a higher caloric seltzer. It's like I said, it's an 8%er because there's most seltzer malt based, or they're not all malt based, sugar or malt based, on the lower alcohol content side. Like I said, these guys are an 8%, so watch out. Like I said, very flavorful. It's a fantastic product. I'm a very big fan of it, but I am very interested to see what they do. They want to keep it direct to consumer for now. They have distributors. We have them set up in certain states to start getting it into brick and mortar, and they are wanting to hold off because they think they're going to sell out of the first round by the end of the week. And I think they could. It's amazing.
Well, that's a great problem to have, but it goes to show too, because when you think of a smaller outfit, the bigger outfits, if you're built for distribution, that's one thing, because you're mass producing, you're going volume. And so forth that way. But if you're a smaller outfit, it's hard to do volume because you just don't have the space and the capital, the money that it takes. So to go to direct, to consumer allows you to have that ability and actually make a little bit of money. Because like you said, there's not a whole lot of money made Any beer you see, anything you see on the shelves, there's not much that the actual producer made off of that, just because of kind of how it's set up. Now, I guess for my last question is, were there any other interesting takeaways from that Treasury report and that stood out to you?
Yeah. So, other things that they recommended, I have several notes here because it was a lengthy report. The TTB really needs to consider making, like I said, making new rules to make it easier for smaller players to figure out things like permitting, your COLA, so certificate of label approval, classes of alcohol, bottle sizes, like all of this stuff is just, which type of alcohol are you? Okay, now you've got this whole set of rules. Okay, are we this one? Now it's this whole set of rules. And oh wait, there's this whole set. That's just at the federal level. Then we go down to the state level and all of that could get completely flipped right on its head. It's I mean, what the TTB classifies as one thing, we may not classify as the same thing. Ciders, perfect example. Guess what? You get to choose who you want to be. Who do you want to be? Do you want to be a beer or do you want to be a wine? I mean, so it does obviously matter what it's made of as a base, but you kind of get to pick which one you want to be. Who has the better laws? Beer doesn't have that wondrous, ability to do that. And it's just, it gets very, very convoluted and confusing. And then again, I haven't even said the word tax, but as I say to all of my clients and my students, at the end of the day, alcohol, you cannot say the word alcohol with the word tax in it. That's why it says the alcoholic, and tobacco and tax and treat beer, it's because you cannot say alcohol without tax. The tax man must always get paid when it comes to alcohol. And they're probably the ones that are probably the staunchest about wanting to change any of this. Here in the good old state of Tennessee, we have some of the highest liquor by the drink tax in the country. So if you buy an alcoholic beverage, you go to a bar and buy a drink, you've got the hefty 9.25% sales tax, and then you can add on top of that a 14% liquor tax. Okay, so I mean, I'm sorry, no, I'm right about that. And it's just absurd how much tax it is. And that's not, if you order a beer, it's not on it.
Interesting.
You don't have that tax. Yeah. So, I mean, that's just one state example of how certain things work. Let's see. Yeah. So, I mean, really, they're really pushing, the really big thing was that pushing that the state government should evaluate their rules between the three tiers and look for ways they can increase competition. So it's really about how do you increase competition? And I think they basically told them how to do it, which is you need to take some of this power away from the wholesalers so that you can give these little guys a chance to start competing with the big guys. But I also think they may need to start putting some restrictions on your Budweiser and Miller Coors of what they're purchasing. I think that's going to happen. I was talking to my client yesterday and they said, at some point we might get attractive enough for a Budweiser. And I'm like, I think that if a year ago before the Treasury report, yeah, but I think that now I would, any transaction they do is going to be highly scrutinized. So that may help for a little while. It's really just, creating an even playing field. I think that is really and I think it's a good thing. I think this report is long overdue, in so many ways. I understand why. I mean, we probably could have had this report pre-COVID, but COVID. So now COVID, as we know, was a fantastic time for manufacturers. I don't have a single manufacturer that didn't grow during COVID. Every single one, all the way down to local brewery that is not even distributing outside their tap room, grew and still growing. And that's great. And I'm so happy to see that. But, at what point is things going to level out and go back to normal where everybody kind of stays in their lane? And I think that's the difference, is that we need to prevent that from happening.
Well, and like you said, too, modernization and being able to adapt on all the levels, because, 5 years ago, a hard seltzer probably wasn't thought of. I'm talking to others, agave spirits, they had to work through that because it didn't exist. And there were distillers wanting to do that and so forth. So, and who knows what will come next. But again, they need to actually be able to not take 6 months or a year to figure out how to properly label things and allow folks to actually really be able to build a business.
Yeah, I think there needs to be more of a spirit of not trying to shove everything into 3 buckets. You're either a wine, a distilled spirit, or a beer. Seltzer is called an internal revenue beer, whatever the heck, whoever came up with that name. Mead, perfect. Another area that's growing in popularity, considered a wine. Okay, why? Because honestly, I think it could have really gone either way with that, but that's where they decided to put it. RTDs, I love the RTDs. I think they're wonderful, but I think there should be a push that, if you make an RTD yes, I think the base alcohol is a spirit, vodka, tequila, whatever, but it's on a lower on the scale alcohol level. Why can't it be next to the seltzer? I think those questions are perfectly legitimate to ask here. And so, like I said, I wish that I had more ability to make anything, happen and change, but I don't. But truly, it is the consumer. The consumers can really drive change based on where they want to spend their money. And if consumers start going to some of these online platforms and spending their money there, as opposed to, your grocery store, so to speak, that could change things. Always follow where the money is going to go at the end of the day. And I think what, a lot of people are afraid of is Amazon coming into the game, because Amazon will blow Amazon will change things almost overnight. If you want to talk about something that will change when it's time, because for anyone to say that Amazon's not going to get in this game, they're sleeping under a rock, because it's going to happen. And when they get in the game, if I'm a distributor, I'm scared to death, because I really think that with the pandemic and with Amazon coming in the game, I'm thinking to myself, why on earth would I go anywhere? I think there will still be a place for wholesalers, but I think they're going to have to very much rethink how they do business. And that could mean, what I would love to see is being more competitive, doing away with these lifetime exclusive contracts with your manufacturers. Come on. It's ridiculous. In the state of Tennessee, if you want to get out of your distribution contract, you have to go make an appeal to the Department of Revenue. No other type of contractual arrangement on earth requires that. You have to have a good faith reason, and you never have it, because there's no obligation for them to do anything in this contract. So that's number one. Number two, if you can get out of your contract if you discontinue selling your brand for an entire year, and then you can get out. Other than that, you're married for life. Now, they can sell you off whoever they want. And it's like, well, how, federal government, did you not expect for the world to turn out the way it is? If you're going to literally hamstring manufacturers the moment they come out the gate, because there comes a point, yes, self-distribution is wonderful. And I encourage every client of mine to engage in it up to a year. But then I say to them, you're going to come to a point where you are either driving your product all over the creation or you're making it. Which are you? And you have to decide which one you are. And most of the time it's they're making it. Mm-hmm. So eventually you have to sign with a distributor. So there's hence the necessary evil. And at that point, I'm just like, so they're going to get fantastic, but let's just be honest, they have hundreds of brands, and are they going to push the biggest sellers? Of course they are. And you would too if you were in their position. They're in a situation where they just can't get ahead. I think that is a really big issue for them. So I think that Amazon coming in could really force a lot of change, because if they now have to compete, because now if you go to your brewery to pick up your order and they're like, oh, we're out, we don't need you anymore. Well, then they're going to be forced to make some changes. They're going to be forced to go to these breweries and say, this is what we can do for you. Maybe have some contracts that have termination clauses. Oh God. Amazing. Termination clauses, quotas, things they have to do for you to earn your business. Oh my Lord, it would be a brand new day. I'd love to see that.
And who knows, maybe one day we will. And until then, hopefully some folks actually take this report and actually do a little bit with it. And we do see at least the right step or some steps in the right direction, kind of like we did see with the pandemic, with the to go cocktails, to go drinks that for the longest time were not allowed, and lo and behold, not a whole lot bad happened during
amazing,
that
time. Right? As I said, I'm sure people did die and get pregnant, but I think collectively the nation did, I'm not talking about the pandemics per se, but like allowing to go alcohol did not cause like, a mass hysteria into sin.
No, it does not. And that's why, but who knows when, like I said, when this will happen. And you know what, we'll probably have plenty more to talk about here in the future with you, Rachel. I appreciate the time and sharing the knowledge, because it's a very big report to just, and a little over my head. And I think a lot of folks' head when you really get into this. And then it's
can't imagine other people would want to read it. Me, page turner.